Quietist Trails. I should probably say this up front, because I know how it sounds once I get into it. I used to believe in chemtrails. I don't mean I had vague questions about weather modification or aviation fuel. I mean I was all the way in. I was convinced the population numbers were inflated, that whole cities existed mostly as shells, that what we call empty land wasn't empty by accident. I know how that sounds now, but you need to understand a few things if you're going to listen to the rest of this. First, I'm not that person anymore. Second, I didn't drift out of it. I worked my way out. Third, I'm proud of that, even if it cost me more than it should have. At the time, it didn't feel like a belief system. It felt like literacy. Like I was finally learning how to read the world instead of just accepting whatever labels were handed to me. All my friends were in the same circles, same forums, same channels, same endless nights connecting dots that only existed because we kept drawing lines between them. When I decided I was done, I didn't just give up ideas. I gave up people. I became suspect, a plant, a collaborator, someone who'd been gotten to. You don't really come back from that. That's part of why I took this trip with Alex. He was my oldest friend, maybe my only one left from before all that. He didn't argue me out of anything. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed. When I said I wanted to get out of town for a few days, he didn't ask many questions. We told ourselves it was about getting away, fresh air, no screens, touching grass like people say now. That part wasn't a lie. I picked the place though. I told Alex it was supposed to be quiet, out of the way. A good spot to clear your head. All of that was technically true. What I didn't say was that I'd heard stories about it. Disappearances, old ones. The kind that don't have clean dates attached to them. Before the Cold War. Before anyone was really keeping records anyone trusted. People who went into the woods and just never came back out. There were rumors of a group once. People called it a cult, because that's what you call anything you don't understand that involves other people sticking together when maybe they shouldn't. Those stories dried up decades ago. No arrests, no closure. It all just stopped. There were other explanations people liked better. Sinkholes, old mines nobody bothered to map. Someone once sent me a PDF that tried to correlate disappearances with limestone regions. Karst terrain. Places where the ground dissolves instead of erodes. I remember skimming it, half interested, half embarrassed by how familiar the thinking felt. The argument was that the land wasn't swallowing people so much as keeping them preserved down there. I didn't save it. That mattered to me at the time. More recently, there were other reports. A plane making low passes over the trees. Not a crop duster, something bigger, something that didn't fit. People posted pictures when they could. Long contrails that didn't behave the way you'd expect. That stopped too. Months before we arrived, according to everything I could find. The place had been quiet since. At the time, I took that as a good sign. We got to the trailhead later than we planned. That wasn't unusual. Alex always drives like he's taking in the scenery, and I'd insisted on stopping twice to check landmarks, places I thought I recognized. Cell service dropped out about 10 minutes before the lot. Not faded. One bar, then nothing. No emergency call indicator. No cached map tiles loading. Alex made a joke about how I'd finally found my empty land off-grid. I laughed. It felt important. Freeing, really. The parking area was small, unmarked except for a weathered post and a trail map that had clearly been updated by hand more than once, and by more than one hand. No other cars. That should have been the first thing that bothered me, but it didn't. I'd wanted quiet. This looked like it. We hiked in maybe 40 minutes before picking up a spot to camp. Very basic. A shallow clearing between trees that weren't old enough to feel imposing. No cliffs, no ravines. Just woods doing what woods usually do. I remember it feeling like you could just wander around those trees for ages without running into much of a natural barrier. The strange part was how normal it all felt at first. We set up the tent, unpacked, made a half-hearted attempt at a fire before deciding we didn't need it yet. The air was still, not dead, no wind pushing sound around. You could actually hear leaves landing when they fell off a tree. We got set up and gathered kindling right there. That was when Alex noticed the phone thing. He tried to send a picture to his girlfriend. It hung. Tried again, nothing. Then the message app froze completely. Guess we're really off grid, he said. I checked mine. Same deal. Emergency calls only. But even that flickered like it wasn't confident. We ran out of things to talk about after a little while. Eventually, the silence got to be a little too much. The fire crackled, but hardly. We knew better than to run our phones down too much. Despite having a recharger on hand, it just wasn't smart to do that out here if you wanted to be safe about it. I'd brought a radio. That was almost embarrassing to admit. Not because there's anything wrong with radios, but because I hadn't brought it for music. It was one of those compact AM/FM receivers, battery powered, nothing fancy. I told Alex it was for weather alerts. We turned it on while we ate, static at first. A couple of faint stations bleeding into each other. Then one came in clear. It was religious. Not aggressively, no shouting, no donations. Just a calm voice, reading scripture, male, followed by a hymn played softly on an organ. It was the kind of broadcast that sounds like it's been running unchanged for 50 years. Alex grimaced. I rolled my eyes and said something about bad luck. We let it play anyway. It was either that or nothing, and the quiet out there felt heavier once we noticed it. The signal didn't fade or drift the way AM usually does. It just stayed. Same volume, same clarity, no matter where we set the radio down. After a while, we stopped paying attention to it. That's when the acoustics started to feel off. It wasn't obvious at first. There was no dramatic sound tricks, just little things. Alex snapped a branch while adjusting the tent line. The sound didn't carry the way it should have. It died almost immediately, like it had been swallowed instead of dissipating. When I spoke, my voice felt close to my head. Not muffled, just sort of contained. Like the air around us wasn't interested in moving it very far. We tested it without really admitting that was what we were doing. Clapping once, calling each other names, listening. There was no echo in the clearing, not even a soft one. But deeper in the trees, past where the undergrowth thickened, something answered back, not immediately or consistently. That was the damnedest thing about it. A delayed return of sound that didn't line up with distance or direction. Alex said it was probably terrain, dense brush, uneven ground. He had a tone for explanations like that, suggested we close the subject. I agreed with him. I didn't want to dwell on it. The radio kept playing behind us, hymn after hymn, a verse here and there, background noise for a place that otherwise felt like it was holding its breath. As it got darker, we saw the lights. They were deep in the woods, not flickering, just small, steady points, low to the ground. They looked fixed in position. They never faltered. Alex thought maybe another camper at first. Then I immediately realized how unlikely that was. Nobody else had been anywhere on the trail. And if they didn't pass us from this direction, where did they park? We stood there for a while, watching. The lights didn't go off, didn't change. Nothing so much as crossed ahead of them to block their light. It wasn't fire either. It was too steady. Eventually, Alex shrugged and said we'd check it out in the morning. I nodded. That felt reasonable. I wanted to explore out here anyway, and that direction was as good as any. We turned with the radio still on, turned down low. It felt wrong to shut it off entirely. I never could sleep without a fan or something in the background. I remember thinking, right before I fell asleep, that the clearing was smaller with the sound out there. That the clearing felt smaller with the sound there, like the radio was marking our little space as occupied. That was the last normal thought I had for a while. I woke up feeling stiff but ready to be off the ground. The light was already pale, filtering through the trees without casting much shadow. No sharp angles, morning doing what it always does. I thought it was nice. For a few seconds, I felt stupid for the way I'd gone to sleep uneasy. Alex was already moving around outside the tent. I could hear him packing something, not bothering to be quiet. Normal sounds, familiar rhythms. That dispelled any lingering concerns I had. The radio was still on. Same station, same voice. It hadn't drifted overnight. No static creep, no dead air, just scripture, followed by a hymn I didn't recognize, played at the same careful volume as before. Alex asked if I slept all right. I said yeah, close enough to the truth anyway. We ate something quick and decided to head out for the lights. Daylight makes confidence easy. Whatever we'd seen the night before felt less mysterious once the color of the woods was visible again. I remember thinking how in sunlight the forest's depth felt flattened. Not never-ending. It wasn't obvious where the lights had been. That was the first complication. From camp, the direction felt right, but the trees didn't offer any landmarks. No break in the canopy, no unusual rock formations, just more of the same repeating shapes. We followed what felt like the best line anyway. At first, nothing happened. We walked, talked a little. Not about the lights, not directly. About work, about people we knew who would have hated this kind of trip. Alex joked about how this was my idea of rehabilitation. I let him have that one. The woods didn't resist us. No thorns, no sudden drops. It really did feel like you could just keep going forever if you wanted to. That was when the sound came back. Not loud. Just thrown back. I said something offhand. I don't even remember what. A comment about the ground sloping more than it looked like it should. A few seconds later, my words came back. Not a clean echo. Not the kind you can clap your hands to test. It was softer than my original voice, slightly warped. Like it had been compressed and then played back through something that didn't quite match the shape of my mouth. Alex stopped walking. "That's weird," he said. And then his own words followed after mine, layered on top of each other in a way that didn't make sense spatially. We stood there, listening. No birds, no insects, no branch snaps, just the quiet and then the faint return of what we'd already said. It didn't repeat again. We tried it. Carefully, Alex said my name. Nothing came back. I said his. Same result. For a while, we convinced ourselves it was terrain. A hollow somewhere, a trick of the trees. The sort of thing you don't notice until it borrows your voice. But there was no rhythm to it, no reliable angle we could recreate. It hadn't responded to any other noises either, only speech. That realization sat with us a long time after we both came to the same conclusion. We kept going and kept talking to a minimum. Around midday, we stopped to eat, not because we were tired, but because it felt like a reasonable thing to do. Something hikers do to break a stretch of walking into parts. While we ate, it happened again. Alex always laughed through his nose first, like he was trying not to be loud. He laughed at something I said, and a moment later his laugh came back to us, flatter, thinner, as if it had been played through a speaker wrapped in cloth. He didn't laugh again. Neither of us spoke for a bit after that. That's when we found the stone. It was lying on its side in a small clearing that didn't look any different from the others until you were already in it. Too angular, not concrete, maybe carved. It looked like a natural stone had been placed out here ages ago and worked into a near-perfect rectangular column. It reminded me of Stonehenge, if there had only ever been one stone, and whoever put it there had decided that was enough. We walked around it, touched it. No markings, no symbols, no sign of recent disturbance, just a flat surface that didn't belong. Alex said maybe it was a survey marker, part of something that had been dismantled, maybe. I didn't argue, but neither of us sounded convinced. We checked the time. If we turned back then, we could make it to camp before dark without pushing it. That was obvious to both of us. We didn't turn back. Instead, we decided to use the stone as a reference point. Something solid. We set a lantern on top of it, turned it on, and stepped back. We checked our batteries, flashlights, headlamps. Everything was fine, prepared, and sensible. Night came faster than we expected. And when it did, the echoes started again. This time, closer. Not loud, not aggressive, just wrong enough that neither of us could pretend it was nothing. We decided to head back toward the lantern. That felt like the responsible choice. We'd pushed far enough, and whatever curiosity had carried us out here this far was gone now, replaced with the need to reestablish something familiar. At first, it seemed straightforward. We walked in what we thought was the same direction we'd come from, keeping our headlamps low, sweeping the ground ahead of us rather than the trees. The forest looked different at night, but not so different that it should have been confusing. After about 10 minutes, Alex slowed. "I don't see it," he said. Neither did I. We stopped and turned our lights outward, searching for the lantern's glow we knew should be there. It wasn't subtle light. We'd tested that earlier. You could see it from further away than you had any right to. But there was nothing. We kept walking. I told myself we just misjudged the angle, that it was further than I remembered, that maybe an animal had came across it and knocked it on the ground behind the stone or a tree. Another 10 minutes passed, then 20. The echoes had stopped completely. That should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like something had stepped into our room from outside and closed the door behind it. Alex said my name. Normal volume. No edge to it. His voice didn't come back at all. That was when I realized I couldn't hear anything else either. No insects, no wind through the leaves, no distant animal movement, just the sound of our feet and our breathing. We stopped again. I checked my phone. No service, no GPS lock, no compass reading worth trusting. The screen brightness felt obscene out here. He said my name again. A few seconds passed, then it came back, not from the direction we'd come, but from behind us. Same word, slightly distorted like before, but closer this time. Too close for the delay. That was when the light appeared. Far off at first, low, steady, fixed. The lantern, I thought. Relief hit me so hard it made my knees weak. I laughed. A sharp sound I didn't recognize as mine. Started walking toward it without thinking. Alex didn't follow right away. "Wait," he said. Not loud, but firm. I stopped. The light didn't move. It didn't flicker. It didn't change size as we stood there looking at it. I realized then that it was too far away. We should have been on top of it by now, but it was at least another 10-minute walk. Maybe we got confused or took a wide bend in our route without realizing it. I pointed it out to Alex and asked if we could have gotten confused. The echo answered before he could. Closer now. We pressed forward and heard the radio. Had we somehow walked all the way back to camp? Same voice, same hum, same careful volume, carried thin and wrong through the trees. Alex whispered something. I didn't catch it. I don't think it mattered. But we hadn't left a light on at camp. We started toward the light together this time. Slower, more careful. Neither of us spoke. The ground sloped as we got closer, not sharply, just enough that we had to watch our footing. Wet leaves. The smell changed too. Not rot, not fuel. Something metallic and stale, like rainwater that had sat too long in a container. The light wasn't moving. Maybe that should have reassured me. Instead, it made everything else feel wrong. Lights don't stay that steady outdoors for long unless they're sheltered. I thought maybe we were not approaching camp at all. Maybe a house with its own radio tuned to the only working station around. We crested a small rise, and the trees opened up just enough for us to see it clearly. It wasn't a lantern. It was coming from inside something, but it wasn't a house. The shape resolved slowly, like my brain was reluctant to finish the thought. Wings first, then the fuselage, A plane, small but not tiny, resting at an angle that suggested it hadn't crashed so much as given up. No fire damage, no torn earth, just a long scar through the undergrowth where it had slid to a stop. The radio was coming from inside the cabin. Same station. Alex stopped short. "Okay," he said quietly. "That's not..." He didn't finish. We stood there for a moment, just looking. The plane wasn't old. The paint wasn't sun-bleached, no moss growing along the seams. Whatever had happened here hadn't been decades ago, but it also hadn't happened recently. There were water tanks visible through the open side hatch. Plastic, industrial, tubing running between them, secured with fittings that looked newer than the rest of the craft. Alex shined his light inside and followed me up to the hatch. He said he would wait outside and look in after, once I started to make my way in. I nodded and stepped through. For a second, a familiar part of my brain clicked into place. Tanks. Tubing. Low altitude flat paths. Distribution. I almost laughed at myself for how fast it came back. Then I saw the basin bolted to the floor, positioned directly beneath a crucifix mounted to the wall above it. Not just decorative, not ornate. It looked somehow functional, like whoever put it there was making sure it was easy to see. Whatever this was, it wasn't about chemistry. The cockpit door was shut. The windows were coated in something opaque. Not paint, more like a film, applied deliberately. I could see light bleeding around the edges, but nothing inside. The radio wasn't mounted to the plane. That took me a second to realize. It was part of the cargo. Old equipment wired into a power source I couldn't immediately identify. Humming steadily. "This is messed up," Alex said. I nodded. "I'm going to take a look," I said. And I immediately regretted how calm it sounded. Alex shook his head. "I'll stay out here. If anything happens, I'll..." He stopped himself. "If you need help," he said instead, "yell." I stepped up into the plane. The floor was slick. Water pooled along the lower side, catching my flashlight beams and breaking it into dull fragments. The air inside was cool, not cold. It felt unused. The radio was louder in here. Too loud. The sound felt overwhelming after being in the quiet for so long. I reached for the controls, meaning only to turn the volume down, but my foot slipped. I didn't fall, just a sudden shift, my weight landing wrong as my hand came down hard against the panel. There was a sharp crack, a flash, then silence. The radio cut out completely. The light went with it. I stood there for a second, heart pounding, waiting for something else to happen. And nothing did. I called out for Alex. My voice sounded wrong in the plane, too close, like it never made it outside. I stepped back down into the clearing and swept my flashlight across the trees. "Alex?" No answer. I called again. Nothing. I turned in a slow circle, the beam catching trunks, brush, the dark shape of the wing. No movement. No sound. That's when I saw the light again. Far off. Low. steady, too far to be Alex's gear, and unmoving. I looked on the ground with my light, searched the area. I kept calling for him, but after 2 or 3 minutes without any sound answering back, I got the idea that the only thing that made sense was if he went to the light, and if he didn't, I couldn't help him. I started walking toward it without a better plan. I don't know how long I walked. My phone said nearly an hour later. At the time, it felt like minutes that kept restarting. I can't explain why, but every few minutes when I felt the urge to call out Alex's name, something in my footfalls made me stop myself short. The light never felt like it got closer. Then suddenly, it was right in front of me. The stone. The lantern, still and electric. On top of it, exactly where we'd left it. I knew where I was. I knew how to get back to camp from here. Relief hit me so hard it made me dizzy. I laughed, loud, and immediately hated the sound. The echo answered. Not delayed, not distant. Right behind me. I sprinted a dozen yards, then just ran. I couldn't tell if I was being followed. I wasn't trying to hide my sound or my breathing anymore. Eventually I hit a clearing, and moonlight lit everything up ahead. I could see the camp, the burned down fire. Nobody was standing there. No Alex. After a minute, I realized the radio was still playing. I collapsed into the tent. I grabbed a hatchet from one of our packs. After 10 minutes of breathing harder than I ever had before, I opened my phone and started writing everything down in this app. I can't send it anywhere. I tried. I stood in the clearing with my phone held up like an offering, turning in slow circles until my arm hurt. One bar flashed on for half a second and died again. No upload, no texts, nothing that sticks. I tried calling. I got through once, I think. A voice answered, but it was so broken and thin that it might have been my own reception lying to me. I said my name and where I was. I said my friend's name. I said plane. I said please. The only words that came back were my own. Half a beat later, from somewhere beyond the trees. I hung up. The radio kept going. It had shifted from hums to talk. Same calm male voice. The kind that never hurries. Saying things that sounded like advice, but weren't. About vigilance. About snares. About not turning around when you feel something at your back. He said clearly, "Put the devil behind you." I stared at the radio for a long time after that. Then I turned it off. The silence hit like pressure equalizing. For maybe 2 seconds, it was just me and the night and the thin hiss in my ears. Then I heard Alex laugh. Out in the woods, past the edge of the clearing. A quick burst, familiar. The exact laugh he'd made earlier when I'd said something stupid at lunch. The one that came back to us through the trees like a bad speaker. The problem was, it wasn't delayed this time. It wasn't distant either. It was close enough that I should have been able to hear his feet, his breath, anything else that would prove there was a person attached to that sound. I didn't hear anything but the laugh. It happened again. Same laugh, same length, same little catch at the end like a hiccup. Like a recording being clicked on and off. That's when I thought about those novelty pins. The ones you could buy at the mall when I was a kid. You'd press the button and it would record a few seconds of audio. press it again, and it would play back, too loud, too clean, never quite matching the room you were in. The echoes out here had always sounded like that. Not the woods repeating us, something repeating us. I grabbed the hatchet out of the pack and sat with my back against the tent pole where I could see the zipper and the tree line at the same time. I tried to tell myself Alex was messing with me, that he'd gone around, found a way to throw his voice, that he'd brought some stupid gadget in his pocket for exactly this kind of moment because he's that kind of guy. But Alex doesn't hike with gadgets. I can't even remember a time when he tried to pull a prank. And even if he did, he wouldn't have been able to make the sound come from 3 different places without moving. The laugh played again, closer. Then my name. In my voice. Not Alex's. My name spoken in my own tone, the way I'd called out earlier when I was looking for him by the plane. It wasn't right. The pitch was slightly wrong. The edges were clipped. It sounded like someone recorded me through cloth. It came from the trees on my left, then from the trees on my right. It came again. My name. Then the laugh. Same little catch. Same restraint. No body attached. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I held my breath until my chest hurt. I don't know how long I stayed like that. The battery percentage on my phone says hours. My body says it was 1 long minute that kept restarting. Eventually, the laughs stopped. The woods stayed quiet. And the worst part was, I couldn't tell if that minute had left, or if it had finally learned not to warn me with sound. I'm writing this in my notes app because it's the only place it will stay. If you're reading it, then someone found my phone. That means I either dropped it running, or I set it down because I thought I was safe for half a second, or someone took it from my hand. I don't know which is worse. I can still smell that plane when I close my eyes. Wet metal. Stale water. The clean old voice of the radio, like it had been waiting for a mouth to borrow. Alex, if you're out there and you can hear me, stop. If that's you laughing, stop. And if it isn't you, please don't say my name again. I turned the radio back on, not because I wanted company, because the silence had started to sound like breathing. The same voice, same station. It had moved on to a new reading, but then it skipped and started playing the same verse about the devil again. Something about the still small voice, about being quiet and knowing. I'm trying. I really am. If you hear this, my voice out there in the trees, don't answer. It isn't me anymore. Epilogue. Quietist Trails is situated above a documented limestone formation associated with an unbroken subterranean network extending beyond county and state boundaries. Portions of the system remaining unmapped due to instability, flooding, and access limitations. Several entrances are believed to exist outside marked trails. The formation has not been officially designated as a cave system within park materials. This phone was recovered by a game warden 3 miles off the marked trail, in an area not consistent with the subject's intended route. The device screen was active when discovered and went dark upon being handled. A vehicle at Quietist Trails base camp was located and identified through DMV records. The registered owner was confirmed as the phone's primary user following a warrant-based IMEI-IMSI request. A second individual, identified as Alex Redacted, is believed to have been with the primary subject. No further contact has been made with either party. Search efforts were conducted for 4 days. No remains were recovered. No aircraft matching the described wreckage was located.